Hey, I'm Jesse, and I found this really wide antique armoire. It looks like the inside was modified to hold an old TV and VHS tapes. Let's take all that out. I'm going to use some of these pieces later. Yeah, it seems like pretty good lumber here. I love working with old furniture like this, but I really hate dealing with flathead screws. Phillips and stars are fine, but flatheads are just crazy. Some of them came out pretty easy, but one of them didn't want to turn at all, so I had to take down the door and then mount it so that I can get maximum pressure onto the screw. The top of this thing is really long and unsupported with a split, so I need to put some extra pieces in there to hold it up tight. Make some marks and cut these boards up. I need a little notch here so I can slam these things in. That helps a lot, but I'm still going to end up adding some more support. This part of the sidewall was all messed up. I'm not sure what happened to it. I can't figure that out, and it took quite a bit to remove it. I managed to cut a pretty straight line with that circular saw. Now I'll just clean up the corners. And there's this little piece that sticks out, but I got it. And I'll use this scrap piece from the interior to make a patch for that section. It'll take several passes to cut that weird shape. I cut this L shape so we can go under the panel and hold the front of it. And I'll secure it with some wood glue and 2 screws. My straight cut wasn't so straight. I'll fill in all the gaps and holes with wood glue and some sawdust. And then I have to cut another patch for the other side. But this one's going to be a lot smaller. It's a much easier spot to clean up. I'll just knock out this damaged area with a chisel and hammer. This nerd likes to wave at the camera every time she sees it. Just clean up the corners and then put in some glue and set this little piece right in place. And then I'll hold it with 2 clamps and 2 big old bricks. I don't want to square up the bottom, so I got to remove these little detail pieces. So there's multiple layers of wood here, and there's little finishing nails and a bunch of screws. The bottom of the back has 2 pieces of wood that are a little uneven and unsupported. So I just cleaned that up with a chisel, and now I'm going to make a little leg to put underneath. And I'll clean up these scrap pieces so that I can add some more support to the top. It's not quite solid yet. I had these skinny strips from something I cut before. I'll use these to fill in the gap in the split that's in the top. But I'll go from underneath. Then on top I'll use sawdust and wood glue. I just push it down with my fingers. And I'll do the same on this little patch here. This corner right here was looking ugly, but now it is beautiful. I'm just temporarily putting in 2 screws here to hold this panel in place. This video is sponsored in part by Big Fun Disc Jockeys, based out of the Bay Area in Northern California. If you're out here trying to learn how to restore antique armoires, but you also need to plan a really good wedding reception, then check out bigfundj.com. They are excellent for helping to plan an event and provide sound support. They're just really great people trying to help celebrate your special day. That's bigfundj.com for both friendly and professional wedding DJs. I'm cleaning up the side here with this orbital sander. This is a really big piece, so it's like a lot of surface area. But then I have to get into all these crevices with just a folded up piece of sandpaper. I hate doing this, but it must be done. And then the corners are especially tricky, but I managed to get it somehow eventually. I'm using 150 grit sandpaper, and I actually sand various parts of this thing multiple times just because of the different blemishes that show up. I think this is the largest piece I've ever done that was not a commission. It's 52 inches wide, so it's pretty substantial. It's so big and damaged that I put in like over 2 weeks of work into this thing. I had this thing for sale for several months, lowered the price, and nobody wanted it. It is literally my biggest blunder. And the top has a ton of scratches, and there's that split you can see there that I filled with sawdust already. So I just went over this whole thing to remove the finish, and I wish that all I had to deal with was these scratches, but it turns out there's a ton of discoloration on this thing. Because of its era, I'm like, is it from someone's inkwell or kerosene lantern? I don't know what these spots are from, but it's solid wood, so I'll just hit it again and we'll see if it gets better. And the second round of sanding helped a lot, but there's still some spots remaining. I don't like taking off these detail pieces because they can get damaged, so I'll leave them on, but then I can't get the orbital sander in there, so I gotta do this whole thing by hand with a piece of sandpaper. The doors were a different kind of wood, so I'm gonna give them a different kind of finish. I got some 2x2 pieces to make the leg structure. I've been seeing people put armoires and cabinets on things like this, so I thought I would give it a try. It came out pretty sturdy. I just need to cut some diagonal pieces here to make it really invincible. I've seen some people put different kinds of nice cabinets on bases like this, and I thought this might be trendy. So I took a risk taking on a project this big with this much damage and trying to put it on a base like this. It was pretty challenging moving this thing and especially storing it, so there were a number of challenges before I even got started. But still, I was looking forward to see its potential. I decided just to stain this in order to make the dark spots harder to see. I thought the stain actually came out really nice. So I had this thing for sale for several months. Typically, I'll post something for sale as soon as I finish it, and I store it in my covered patio area. It makes it easier for when someone comes to buy it and check it out. But the piece is pretty big, so it sucked to store it there. I kept lowering the price. Over the course of several months, only one person asked about it, and that never materialized. After about 4 months, I gave up. I couldn't keep it on my patio anymore. I had to move it to the side of the house where it would be exposed to direct sun and tree goop. At this point, this project took me the longest. I thought I might get a big payout. I went weeks without selling anything. This was just a compounded failure, very frustrating, and it was staring me in the face every day. So it was a critical blow, and I regretted even taking on this project. Like I was telling myself, I should have just broke it down and harvested the lumber. But you know, I just had to keep going. It was tough to give up on selling it. I ruined the finish by moving it to the side of the house, but then I was able to move on to other smaller projects that actually sold. But I mean, what do you do with such a big failure like this? Do you look for someone to blame? Or do you give up on it? Cut your losses? Try to save face? I didn't know what to do. While I was working on this project, I wasn't doing anything else. And then after I finished it, we had a bit of rain, so I didn't have any other projects coming out for a bit. So financially, we were in a tough spot, and this project just really sabotaged me. Like it actually had me thinking that I shouldn't be doing this kind of furniture work. And you know, sometimes it is very difficult to not judge yourself by your failures. I mean, I'll try to take inventory of my shortcomings, but then I also have to move forward and try to remember that the reality isn't that I'm just made out of failures. After a while, we were able to recover from this financial loss. It sucked for a while, but we're fine now. And then after this project, I was able to do a lot of other projects that I really liked. So in the moment, I was definitely pretty hard on myself, and I think that happens sometimes. But I was also able to move on and do other good projects. And this is probably true in many areas of my life, but it just really came up in this one giant armoire project. And hopefully by the end of this video, you'll see that it actually came out to be a pretty nice armoire. I'm using some scrap wood here to hold the back panel in place. It just seemed like the easiest way to secure that new piece of wood. And even though the interior doesn't have much damage, it is ugly. So I gotta scuff sand the whole thing, and then I'll just paint the whole thing white. And this paint was from the Oops counter. It's super cheap. It's missing the handle, so it's a little tricky to carry around, but it's fine. The paint works the same. I made this shelf to go inside the armoire, and I wanted to paint the support pieces white, but leave the shelf part wood color. The support pieces are going to be attached to the walls of this armoire, so it would look better if they were white. And this guy really needs a second coat. And then I'll give the underside of this shelf one coat of polyurethane, and the top side will get 2 or 3 coats. I had to use a step ladder to work on this thing because of how tall the piece of furniture is. We've already established that. And you can still see where that split was in the top, but it's way more solid. It doesn't bend right there anymore. And after all that sanding, it is way smooth now. I'll give the sides just one coat because they don't get much wear and tear like the top does. The top started to bubble a little bit, and I don't know if that's from getting too much sun or if there was air inside the wood somehow. I think it's from sitting in the sun when it was wet. So I just scuff sanded that with the 220 grit sandpaper, and I'm going to put another coat over it. After I sanded it, I wiped it down really good, but it still looks like it's dusty. But I don't know, it goes away once you put a clear coat over it again. And here's an extra coat on the top side of the shelf. And these little guys were on the drawers. I'm just going to try to clean these with some Brasso. And I bought 2 more for the doors. They match pretty good. This drawer doesn't go in all the way, so I gotta pull this out. Turns out there's a block of wood glued in back there. I just knocked it out with a chisel and we're good. I think the doors are made of cedar. I like the way the grain looks on them. So I just put a coat of water-based polyurethane to keep that look. I think the contrast to the dark body of this armoire will look pretty cool. These are the new ones I just bought. So now to get this shelf in, I had to take off the support pieces. It's just a tight fit. You know, holding the shelf at funny angles. Finally get it in there and put the screws back into place. And the drill won't fit, so I'm doing this by hand with a regular screwdriver. I didn't plan on this piece being so much work. As you get working on it, you find that there's more things to do on it. And before you know it, it's been over 2 weeks. I really like the way that it came out. I just don't think I was very good at selling a piece this large. I got every surface on this thing as clean as I can get it, and I'm probably just going to end up using this to store all my tools. And it'll just be a reminder. Sometimes I fail big, but I gotta keep moving forward. But I'll keep taking risks, trying new things. We'll see. Hopefully it all works out. Yeah, this thing didn't come out too bad though. That's pretty nice. See? Don't be so hard on yourself.